To fill us in more on Joe Biden and his plans for the universe, Blake Christian from Holthouse Carlin Van Trigt. Blake, great to see you.
Great to see you, Mike.
Big question on who got the biggest audience in Joe's speech. Was it Joe's speech? And the only ones watching were the 200 allowed in, or the Oscars. Now, I would probably think that the Oscars normally would have won, but because they had 200 locked in the rooms with Joe, listening to his speech, that's probably 199 more than the Oscars. So I would think that that had a greater viewing than the Oscars, which is good for Joe. Wait. Sorry, Blake, I've got a call in my ear. No, figures just in from Central America. They were all watching and packing suitcases. So obviously Joe Biden bombed in the US and did very well in Central America. But being sensible, what are President Biden's new taxes to pay for additional welfare spending?
Well, you know, he hasn't been really specific on the American Families Act, which is his latest, pork-filled bill, $1.8 trillion on the heels of, three other big ones. And part of it, actually, we do know a little bit. Part of it's going to be from enforcement, and with a focus to the ultra rich. So we're going to, potentially see more audits. But the IRS is way understaffed, so I don't know that that's going to happen. And then we've heard about the capital gain tax increase, and then he would basically his whole mission is to unwind everything that Trump has done. So he would roll back individual tax rates to 39.6%. I shouldn't say rolling back, the timetable to 39.6 where they were back in 2017. And then he would also, the big one and the real disruptive one on a worldwide basis, I think, is capital gain rates for people making more than $1 million would jump up to 43.4% when you combine the Obamacare tax for the wealthy on top of a 39.6% ordinary rate. So it would just decimate the stock market, and who's going to put their money at risk to get after state tax on top of that, keep 50% of your risk capital return. It's just not going to happen.
What's the rationale other than increased revenue to increase capital gains tax by so much?
It's really just to punish the rich. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. If you really wanted to collect money, you would do a national sales tax. For pennies on purchases, you could, collect trillions of dollars. But that would be a regressive system. But you could give a tax credit to the poor. So it's really kind of surgically to get back at the wealthy, in my mind. This was one of his campaign promises. It does two things. It fulfills his attack on the rich as part of his campaign, and it also unwinds his nemesis's tax breaks. He despises Trump, and all of his followers despise Trump.
Interesting too, he had a welcoming visit from the FBI this morning, or Department of Justice, to Rudy Giuliani's place, and obviously it was just to say, hello, how are you? I hope you're well, and have a good day. Not. But the interesting thing, they had this warrant, apparently, according to Tucker on Fox, had this warrant that was an open warrant that could search the whole apartment for anything and everything. And on Rudy's laptop was all the information on Hunter Biden, which they left behind. So that's pretty interesting that they go there searching for information on collusion with the Ukraine government in some way. And then the information that would have been there, which obviously, unless he writes letters, pen to paper, it's all sitting on his laptop. But no, they didn't touch it. Interesting, as I said, interesting from the Biden administration, they have this warmth for Republicans, and it's nice to see that they're stretching out their hand to handcuff you, something like that.
Right. That's just wonderful, using your political clout against your, your enemies.
Just
sounds like Nixon administration.
It sounds like Russia or China. Just on that, what's the feeling amongst the high-end business at the moment towards the Biden administration? I mean, a lot of them would have supported Joe Biden in the recent elections, but do you think they would have expected that the transition from a capitalist to a socialist to a communist society was going to happen so fast?
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of support from all the Wall Street CEOs, and they'll certainly get the sting from his policies. I think I mentioned last week too that a lot of the projections are that the earnings for public companies will be down about 7 to 8% next year if this went through. The simple fact that the stock market is still pretty strong is an indication that the Wall Street doesn't view Congress as really having an appetite for this. I think we've already seen the corporate tax rate that he threatened at 28%. The Democrats have already said, we would settle for 25. So there's already been a compromise there. I think we're going to see some more of that with a 50-50 split in the Senate. So, even though they do have control, all you need to do is swing Manchin or, another moderate Democrat and they're dead in the water. So we'll see what happens.
AOC must be sitting there rubbing her hands going, all for me and none for you. Now, reading a recent email from Matty. Matty says, here's a novel idea. First, let people get back to work. There are millions of unfilled jobs out there. Once those are filled, do like Trump, that terrible name, do like Trump and grow the economy to provide more jobs. What is better, providing full-time jobs or taking money from others and handing out welfare? Welfare is unneeded given the available jobs. Your thoughts on that? And Maddie?
Yeah. And if you read through this American Families Plan, it's just all these giveaways in there, and it's tax credits, refundable tax credits. It's free child care for it's early education, they're saying, for 3 and 4 year olds. So it's really daycare, okay? And they're sitting, the cost of it, is eclipses the supposed lost revenue from these people not being able to work. When you really peel back the onion, it's just incredible how much they're going to spend to supposedly fix, a problem that has these inflated numbers of what it's costing because, we're not giving daycare and we're not, covering health and, people are malnourished. And, and on the flip side, they're saying, 20% of the young kids are obese. So it can't be both. It's either that they're, if it's a nutrition problem, why are 20% overweight? On the other side, they're sitting there arguing that, all these kids are starving. So anyway, it's really, really a strange narrative in the White House version of this. And I apologize, I digressed. Let's get back to your question.
No, just but it actually makes sense. What's happening is that at the moment, Biden administration is really poking its nose in everybody's business more than government should. In fact, a refugee who fled communist Cuba warned during a recent interview that he believes many Americans have already swallowed the poison pill of communism. Maximo Alvarez, who fled the United States from Cuba under Operation Peter Pan in 1961, said on the latest episode of the podcast, The Truth with Elisa Booth, that communism has successfully infiltrated American culture and institutions. Do you feel that too?
It is everywhere, and you talk to most of the younger people, and they're all for everything free. And that's my big question, so again, part of his next plan, stimulus plan, is to pay for 2 years of community college. And it's hard to get into those classes already. So I'm just scratching my head. They don't have the capacity, and maybe they'll use Zoom to a certain extent, but they don't have the capacity to take on 50, 100% more students. And so my big question is, I wouldn't mind subsidizing some tuition if they were for majors like engineering, business, some of the trades. I'm a huge fan of electricians and cabinet maker, all that is important to the overall economy, and some people are better suited for that type of long-term job, and that they're going to get out of school and make a ton of money, much more than some of the people that have liberal arts degrees. But we need to get rid of, I heard Hunter Biden's going to be teaching a college class on fake news.
I know, that's hilarious.
Should that even be a class that we're actually paying somebody to teach, and then now we're going to pay somebody's tuition to attend that class?
Yeah, but
and the other thing, there's nothing in here there should be a focus on using technology and getting the cost of education down. I mean, we all know that inflation in universities and things has just skyrocketed way more than inflation over the last 20, 30 years. Why don't they try and control that? And then you get more bang for your buck out of the education system.
Back to Hunter, I mean, really they should have had him not teaching about fake news, should have been teaching about fake business, because he is a fake business person. Right. Even though he does love the Ukraine, it's a lovely place to visit. What does Sean Hannity call him? No experience hunter. So, but he will do a fabulous job teaching fake news, because he will be a fake teacher. Now, back to tax, our favourite subject. Which investors won't be affected by higher capital gains tax?
Well, it's for people that have more than $1 million. Hasn't been clear whether it's taxable income or adjusted gross income. So it's clearly the top 1%, maybe the top 0.5%. But he's going after the top 2% overall, because he said nobody making less than $400,000 will see a tax increase. We certainly know they will, but basically that leaves the top 2% for those making more than $400,000. But the capital gain hit, that really high rate will apply as it stands now for $1 million or more. I'm sure they'll end up dropping that, and but I think they'll drop the threshold, and I think they'll also drop the rate a bit.
What impacts will the tax rises then have on business formation and investment? Well,
normally, I mean, right now everybody loves equities, stock infusions, and they don't really not that interested in making a debt investment into a company, because they're going to get really slim returns, 2, 3, 4% on debt. So the equity has a lot more sizzle, with an expectation of 8, 12, 16% kind of on a, that's not out of the realm of possibilities, and that's a huge difference. And you're going to just see the equity markets dry up, in my mind. I mean, I wouldn't be telling clients to invest $1 million into some speculative startup company if they're going to end up with only walking with 50 cents on the dollar of whatever profit they make, and they have a better than even chance, or a lot, probably a 8-to-1 chance of losing that money if it's a real startup.
With inflation increasing but still low, sort of low, when will financial markets become concerned about the level of government spending and high US public debt?
It's really, I think there's been a shift over the last few years that says, well, maybe that whole, debt thing isn't as big a deal as we thought, because the federal government can keep printing money, and as long as other major financial centers around the world are also, those countries are also printing an equal percentage of new money, it's a level playing field. But I think not just the COVID spending, but this is fundamental socialistic kind of pattern that's going on now. I think it's a race to the bottom. We're going to be outspending these other countries, and the dollar is going to devalue. I'm not an economist, but I predict, I feel like the dollar is going to devalue against other currencies, and we're I think worldwide we're going to have inflation. I mean, there's just no way that you're not going to have inflation from all this spending, and then the other part of it, as we knew, following on the infrastructure, he wants $15 an hour minimum wage across the country. Doesn't matter even if it's a low cost geographic area. Anybody that's going to do government contracting has to be paying that, and even the daycare workers now, for all of these 3- and 4-year-olds, they're going to get paid that, and the people with some educational background are going to get paid as much as kindergarten teachers. So all of this is just increase, inflation. It's coming like a freight train.
We talked about it a few months ago. In fact, that with the inflationary, or with the just increase in wages, which will add to inflation. But what also will happen is that those that are on a particular wage, and there was that wage, just say X amount of dollars compared to the one below them because they have more experience and yada, yada, yada. Right. They're going to want more too, because they don't want that gap closing too much. So you're probably going to see this great wage explosion, aren't you?
Right. And the big problem, I mean, you had mentioned it earlier about, getting businesses started again and things. There's not people that are motivated to go back to work because they just extended the unemployment period until September. And so if you can, sit on your couch and play Xbox all day, and why are you going to go to work and make an incremental, $100 or $200 more? So everybody who's trying to reopen right now is, they're at a standstill because they can't get the people to work. And I think this is part of their grand scheme to, keep the economy slowed down and let the government, be this big safety net, and the Democrats will control forever, because the public's going to know that if the Republicans are controlling, they're going to be a little more frugal on how some of these funds are doled out to people.
And especially when they make Washington, D.C. and Guam states. Of course, they're not going to have a majority forever in Congress. Maybe
no.
They might, in fact. Now, we had, just to wind this up, we had Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin on the other day, and which enabled YouTube to shut us down because they don't like Ron Johnson and what he was saying. And we're talking about Joe Biden and his presidency, the first 100 days, and we're comparing it to his climb up the stairs of Air Force One. So would you say that Joe Biden's presidency at the moment is very much like that, stumbling and uphill?
I think it's a great analogy, even though I hate to say anybody at his age fall, it is a good analogy, I think.
Now, out of a rating of 10, we had a very strong, I think 5 or 6 at one stage. It's sort of waning a bit. Out of 10, is he still in the positives, or has he slipped below that?
Right now, having read the White House fact sheet on the American Families Plan, and on the heels of his other legislation and all these executive orders, I'd give him a 2.5 right now, and I'm being very generous.
Heading below zero. That's net zero popularity. Blake Christian from Holthouse Carlin and Van Trigt. If somebody wants to talk to you about tax, and they mustn't do that until you've had a rest, how do they do that? How can they book in a conversation with you and to talk to you about taxing things?
Right. Contact me after May 17th, the extended filing deadline, please. But the firm website is HCVT.com, and you can Google Blake Christian CPA, and you'll get my contact information and articles there.
Blake Christian from HCVT.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Always fun.